Chapter 4 Nehemiah's enemies. When Sanballat, the governor of Samaria, heard that we were rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, he became angry and started insulting our people. In front of his friends and the Samaritan army, he said, "What is this feeble bunch of Jews trying to do? Are they going to rebuild the wall and offer sacrifices all in one day? Do they think they can make something out of this pile of scorched stones?" Tobiah from Ammon was standing beside Sanballat and said, "Look at the wall they are building. Why, even a fox could knock over this pile of stones. But I prayed, our God, these people hate us and have wished horrible things for us. Please answer our prayers and make their insults fall on them. Let them be the ones to be dragged away as prisoners of war. Don't forgive the mean and evil way they have insulted the builders." The people worked hard, and we built the walls of Jerusalem halfway up again. But Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people from the city of Ashdod saw the walls going up and the holes being repaired. So they became angry and decided to stir up trouble and to fight against the people of Jerusalem. But we kept on praying to our God, and we also stationed guards day and night. Meanwhile, the people of Judah were singing a sorrowful song. "So much rubble for us to haul. Worn out and weary, will we ever finish this war?" Our enemies were saying. "Before those Jews know what has happened, we will sneak up and kill them and put an end to their work." On at least 10 different occasions, the Jews living near our enemies warned us against attacks from every side. And so I sent people to guard the wall at its lowest places and where there were still holes in it. I placed them according to families, and they stood guard with swords and spears and with bows and arrows. Then I looked things over and told the leaders, the officials, and the rest of the people, "Don't be afraid of your enemies. The Lord is great and fearsome. So think of him and fight for your relatives and children, your wives and homes." Our enemies found out that we knew about their plot against us, but God kept them from doing what they had planned. So we went back to work on the wall. From then on, I let half of the young men work, while the other half stood guard. They wore armor and had spears and shields, as well as bows and arrows. The leaders helped the workers who were rebuilding the wall. Everyone who hauled building materials kept one hand free to carry a weapon. Even the workers who were rebuilding the wall strapped on a sword. The worker who was to blow the signal trumpet stayed with me. I told the people and their officials and leaders, "Our work is so spread out that we are a long way from one another. If you hear the sound of the trumpet, come quickly and gather around me. Our God will help us fight." Every day from dawn to dark, half of the workers rebuilt the walls, while the rest stood guard with their spears. I asked the men in charge and their workers to stay inside Jerusalem and stand guard at night. So they guarded the city at night and worked during the day. I even slept in my work clothes at night. My children, the workers, and the guards slept in theirs as well, and we always kept our weapons close by. Nehemiah's concern for the poor. Chapter 5. Some of the men and their wives complained about the Jews in power and said, "We have large families and it takes a lot of grain merely to keep them alive." Others said, "During the famine, we even had to mortgage our fields, vineyards, and homes to them in order to buy grain." Then others said, "We had to borrow money from those in power to pay the government tax on our fields and vineyards. We are Jews just as they are, and our children are as good as theirs. But we still have to sell our children as slaves, and some of our daughters have already been raped. We are completely helpless. Our fields and vineyards have even been taken from us." Even I heard their complaints and their charges. I became very angry, so I thought it over and said to the leaders and officials, how can you charge your own people interest? Then I called a public meeting and accused the leaders by saying, we have tried to buy back all of our people who were sold into exile. But here you are selling more of them for us to buy back. The officials and leaders did not say a word because they knew this was true. I continued, what you have done is wrong. We must honor our God by the way we live, so the Gentiles can't find fault with us. My relatives, my friends, and I are also lending money and grain, but we must no longer demand payment in return. Now give back the fields, vineyards, olive orchards, and houses you have taken, and also the interest you have been paid. The leaders answered, we will do whatever you say and return their property without asking to be repaid. So I made the leaders promise in front of the priest to give back the property. Then I emptied my pockets and said, if you don't keep your promise, that's what God will do to you. He will empty out everything you own, even taking away your houses. The people answered, we will keep our promise. Then they praised the Lord and did as they had promised. Nehemiah is generous. I was governor of Judah from the 20th year that Artaxerxes was king until the 32nd year. And during these entire 12 years, my relatives and I refused to accept the food that I was allowed. Each governor before me had been a burden to those people to making them pay for this food and wine and by demanding 40 silver coins a day. Even their officials had been a burden to the people, but I respected God and I didn't think it was right to be so hard on them. I spent all my time getting the wall rebuilt and did not buy any property. Everyone working for me did the same thing. I usually fed 150 of our own Jewish people and their leaders, as well as foreign visitors from surrounding lands. Each day, one ox, 6 of the best sheep, and lots of chickens were prepared. Then every 10 days, a large supply of wine was brought in. I knew what a heavy burden this would have been for the people, and so I did not ask for my food allowance as governor. I pray that God will bless me for everything I have done for my people. The wall is finished in spite of enemy plots. Chapter 6. Plots against Nehemiah. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, and our other enemies learned that I had completely rebuilt the wall. All I lacked was hanging the doors in the gates. Then Sanballat and Geshem sent a message, asking me to meet with them in one of the villages in Ono Valley. I knew they were planning to harm me in some way. So I sent messengers to tell them my work is too important to stop now and go there. I can't afford to slow down the work just to visit you. They invited me 4 times, but each time I refused to go. Finally, Sanballat sent an official to me with an unsealed letter which said, a rumor is going around among the nations that you and the other Jews are rebuilding the wall and planning to rebel because you want to be their king. And Geshem says it's true. You even have prophets in Jerusalem claiming you are now the king of Judah. You know the Persian king will hear about this, so let's get together and talk it over. Send a message back to Sanballat saying none of this is true. You are making it all up. Our enemies were trying to frighten us and to keep us from our work, but I asked God to give me strength. One day I went to visit Shemaiah. He was looking very worried and he said, let's hurry to the holy place of the temple and hide there. We will lock the temple doors because your enemies are planning to kill you tonight. I answered, why should someone like me have to run and hide in the temple to save my life? I won't go. Suddenly I realized that God had not given Shemaiah this message, but Tobiah and Sanballat had paid him to trick me and to frighten me into doing something wrong because they wanted to ruin my good name. Then I asked God to punish Tobiah and Sanballat for what they had done, prayed that God would punish the prophet Noadiah and the other prophets who, together with her, had tried to frighten me. The work is finished on the 25th day of the month Elul. The wall was completely rebuilt. It had taken 52 days. When our enemies in the surrounding nations learned that the work was finished, they felt helpless because they knew that our God had helped us rebuild the wall. All this time, the Jewish leaders and Tobiah had been writing letters back and forth. Many people in Judah were loyal to Tobiah for two reasons. Shechaniah, son of Ara, was his father-in-law, and Tobiah's son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. The people would always tell me about the good things Tobiah had done, and then they would tell Tobiah everything I had said. So Tobiah kept sending letters, trying to frighten me. Chapter 7. After the wall had been rebuilt and the gates hung, then the temple guards, the singers, and the other Levites were assigned their work. I put my brother Hanani in charge of Jerusalem, along with Hananiah, the commander of the fortress, because Hananiah could be trusted and he respected God more than most people did. I said to them, "Don't let the gates to the city be opened until the sun has been up for a while, and make sure that they are closed and barred before the guards go off duty at sunset. Choose people from Jerusalem to stand guard at different places around the wall and others to stand guard near their own houses." Exiles who returned. A list of exiles who returned. This is also told in Ezra 2 1-70. Although Jerusalem covered a large area, not many people lived there and no new houses had been built. So God gave me the idea to bring together the people, their leaders and officials, and to check the family records of those who had returned from captivity in Babylonia after having been taken there by King Nebuchadnezzar. About this same time, I found records of those who had been the first to return to Jerusalem from Babylon province. By reading these records, I learned that they settled in their own hometowns, and that they had come with Zerubbabel, Joshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispereth, Bigvai, Nehum, and Baana. Here is how many had returned from its family group: 2,172 from Parosh, 372 from Shephatiah, 652 from Ara, 2,818 from Pahath Moab, who were all descendants of Joshua and Joab, 1,254 from Elam, 845 from Zatu, 760 from Zakai, 648 from Binui, 628 from Bebai, 2,322 from Asgad, 667 from Adonikam, 2,067 from Bigvai, 655 from Adin, 98 from Ether, also known as Hezekiah, 328 from Hashum, 324 from Bezar, 112 from Harif, and 95 from Gibeon. Here is how many people returned whose ancestors had come from the following towns: 188 from Bethlehem and Netophath, 128 from Anathoth, 42 from Beth Azmaveth, 743 from Kiriath Jearim, Chephirah and Vieroth, 621 from Ramah and Geba, 122 from Michmas, 123 from Bethel and Ai, 52 from Nebo, 1,254 from Elam, 320 from Harim, 345 from Jericho, 721 from Lod, Hadid and Ono, and 3,930 from Sena. Here is how many returned from each family of a priest: 973 descendants of Joshua from Jediah, 1,052 from Immer, 1,247 from Pashur, and 1,017 from Harim. Here is how many returned from the families of Levites: 74 descendants of Hodeva from the Families of Jeshua and Kadmiel, 148 descendants of Asaph from the temple musicians, and 138 descendants of Shalom, Eter, Talmon, Akub, Hattaitah, and Shobai from the temple guards. Here are the names of the families of temple workers whose descendants returned: Ziha, Hasufa, Tabaoth, Keros, Saya, Pardon, Lebana, Hagaba, Shalmei, Hanan, Gideil, Gahar, Reaya, Rezin, Nekoda, Gazam, Uzzah, Pasea, Besai, Meunim, Nefsheshim, Bakbuk, Hakupa, Hafur, Baslith, Mechaida, Harsha, Barkos, Sisera, Tema, Neziah, and Hatifa. Here are the names of Solomon's servants whose descendants returned: Sotai, Sophereth, Perida, Zala, Dakon, Gider, Shephatiah, Hattai, Puchereth, Hazebaim, and Ammon. A total of 392 descendants of temple workers and of Solomon's servants returned. There were 642 who returned from the families of Deliah, Tobiah, and Nekoda, though they could not prove they were Israelites. They had lived in the Babylonian towns of Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Cherub, Adon, and Immer. The families of Hobiah, Hakos, and Basilai could not prove they were priests. The ancestors of the family of Basilai had married the daughter of Basilai from Gilead and had taken his wife's family name. But the records of these three families could not be found, and none of them were allowed to serve as priests. In fact, the governor told them, "You cannot eat the food offered to God until He lets us know if you really are priests." There were 42,360 who returned, in addition to 7,337 servants and 245 musicians. Altogether, they brought with them 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys. Many people gave gifts to help pay for the materials to rebuild the temple. The governor himself gave 8 kilograms of gold, 50 bowls to be used in the temple, and 530 loaves for the priests. The family leaders gave 153 kilograms of gold and 1,458 kilograms of silver. The rest of the people gave 153 kilograms of gold, 1,325 kilograms of silver, and 67 robes for the priests. And so, by the seventh month, priests, Levites, temple guards, musicians, workers, and many of the ordinary people had settled in the towns of Judah.